So thank you. It's good to be with you.
Well, it is good to be with you too. Let's talk about the American Rescue Plan. I'm glad that we're doing this really because emphasizing the administration's priorities as it pertains to equity, which you all talk a lot about.
Yeah.
Given your lived experience and the kinds of things that you pushed for, I want to talk about the priorities as it pertains to women and people of color.
Yeah.
So, are there areas of the bill where you weighed in specifically? I was listening yesterday. One thing that looked familiar to me was the announcement yesterday of the members of that COVID-19 Equity Task Force. That sounded like maybe your influence.
Yes. In fact, yes. And it is, the basis of it is my bill around racial disparities and creating a racial disparities task force, which when I was in the Senate, I was pushing. Because, of course, we know that it is a fact that there are these disparities that existed long before the pandemic and have only been highlighted during the course of the pandemic. So it has become one of the areas of focus and really a priority area for us as an administration in the American Rescue Plan, which is basically to say, look, first of all, call it what it is, call it by its name. And then let's address it. But if we don't call it by its name, then we will not deal with it appropriately. But I'll say this, Errin, just to back up for a minute. You raised the point about equity, and I think it's important for people to understand the difference between equality and equity, right? And equality means everybody gets the same thing, and that sounds right. That sounds fair. But there's an assumption in that everyone starts out in the same place. Everyone doesn't start out in the same place. And so that's the point of equity, which is to say, are the outcomes equitable? Meaning, does everyone end up in the same place, right? Taking into account that not everyone starts, not everyone's born on third base. And so that's our administration's approach, is to say, let's be equitable and make sure that when we talk about resources and the distribution of resources, that it's happening in an equitable way. And that requires that we take into account certain disparities, and in this case, racial disparities. And so that's the work we're doing. And I feel very strongly about it. The president feels very strongly about it. He and I spend a lot of time together in the Oval Office, and he is always pushing this point in a way that I think would comfort a lot of people to know that their president also feels very strongly about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, to your point on that, in those conversations with President Biden, what are your marching orders from the president to really help get the American Rescue Plan across the finish line? And what did you tell him specifically is important to you about the things that you would like to see staying in this bill?
Well, we actually are very aligned about our priorities. And, it is about getting kids back to school. It is about getting vaccines to everybody who needs them as quickly as possible. It is about getting people back to work, rescuing our small businesses. It is about dealing with the fact that we're in the midst of a hunger crisis in America. When you're looking in many communities at 1 in 4 households describing their household as being hungry. And so these are the priorities. And so maybe the obvious point is this: the American Rescue Plan is literally about helping people survive through the depth of this crisis, which we are still in. Errin, I think about it this way. Some people might think of this as, okay, well, we experienced a hurricane. It's now time to kind of clean up. No, that's not this situation. And if you want to extend that metaphor, maybe it is, but it's still in the hurricane. Mm-hmm. And the winds are it's even faster than it was. When you look at the fact that since the December bill, over 100,000 people have died from COVID, right? So the way we're approaching the American Rescue Plan is to say, people are suffering right now, and we need to act quickly to get them relief. So that's the $1,400 check. On top of the $600 that went out in December, to get people the relief they need. The number of people who were holding down jobs, who are working hard, who cared about their work, who were raising and supporting their families, who are now unemployed by the millions. Folks need help. The number of people who have been on unemployment now for longer than 6 months. They just need help to get through the depth of this crisis. And part of our point is that, we have to be here for the people. We have to show up. This is a pandemic not of these folks making. And they deserve to know that in a moment of deep crisis, that is a public health crisis, that is an economic crisis, we're looking at, frankly, an educational crisis, when we are estimating that some of our kids are going to be behind by 2 years because of the days they've been missing just in the last year. This is a time for us to act with a sense of urgency and compassion and humanity.
Well, is this also the case that you're making inside the Senate? I mean, look, let's name names. Who are you talking to in the Senate to get this done? And who are you talking to outside of the Senate?
We're talking to everybody. And we've brought in a bipartisan way, we've been pretty public about the fact that we're reaching out to people across the aisle. We know that when we are talking about who has been hard hit, we're talking about these kids, for example, they could care less who their parents voted for in that last election. They need relief. So we're talking to everybody. We believe that we can actually get progress in a bipartisan way. There was a group of 10 Republican senators who early on in this, I mean, we've only been in 3 weeks, by the way. So when I say early in the process, I mean last week and the week before. But we're reaching out to everyone because we know and we believe and we want to believe and we have to believe that real leaders in a moment of crisis will have the capacity to see the need and to work together and to put aside ideological and certainly partisan gamesmanship. And so that's what we're counting on.
Yeah. Anybody's response that felt particularly encouraging from you, even at this early stage?
Well, I mean, listen, if you think about the fact that we had that group of 10, for example, Republican senators who requested a meeting with us, and we, of course, obliged and warmly welcomed them into the Oval Office, and to talk detail. They were there for 2 hours. We talked for 2 hours and got into the details. We pulled out the numbers and really started to talk about what we need to do and what we can accomplish. So I feel optimistic. I got the sense from them that they really welcomed a real exchange of ideas, that it wasn't just some window dressing. It wasn't just, politics and name calling. So, but every day we're meeting. Today we had a bipartisan meeting with senators today in the Oval Office this morning. So we're gonna push ahead, but we are working in good faith and with an assumption and a belief that others will too.
Okay. I want to go back to equity and really talking about how the administration ensures equitable distribution of the vaccine, which I know is something that you care about and you talk about. Can you talk more about yesterday's announcement that the vaccines are headed directly to community health centers and underserved areas?
Yes. So we're really excited about that. In fact, I convened a meeting of mayors yesterday, and I talked with them about what we need to do to get the relief and vaccines where they're most needed. And community health centers, those are a lot of us know where the community health center is in our neighborhood, in our community. We know it by name. We've been there. They are trusted sources of healthcare. And so we're really excited about that. And that's rolled out this week. We are also rolling out this week a partnership with pharmacies so that we can make sure that where people normally go, where they're used to going, that's the place where they can receive the vaccine. But I'll tell you also, Errin, we came in, again, 3 weeks ago, if you can believe that, and there was no stockpile of vaccines. There was no stockpile.
Yeah.
So we are trying to, the president has invoked the Defense Production Act to get the vaccines, to get on the production line and get them out as quickly as possible. And we're excited about how we're doing it. There was no national strategy or plan, no national plan for vaccine distribution. So when we came in, we started to implement a plan, which again, each day and each week, is growing and growing. And this week, to your point, being the community health centers and the pharmacies. And, I took the vaccine. I've had the vaccine, both doses. It is safe. It will save lives. It is simple to take. And I just want to encourage everyone that when it's your turn, please get your vaccine, get vaccinated, because it's one thing to have the vaccines, it's another thing to have vaccinations. And we want to make sure everybody, when it's their turn, they actually receive the vaccination.
Yeah, I mean, you did take that vaccine publicly, and I know that was in an effort to instill confidence in the American people generally, but frankly, in the to overcome some of that historical skepticism in the
That's
Black community specifically. And you've got many Black Americans, including a lot of Black women, that are hesitant to take the vaccine, and
Yeah,
even the ones who are willing to take it are still facing way too many hurdles to access, including a lot of those essential workers, domestic workers that I know you
that's right.
championed as a senator. I mean, what more can you say or do as vice president to address these dual disparities?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, again, we need to name things what they are, right? I mean, you know of my longstanding work in terms of Black maternal mortality. These things are just true, and we need to speak truth about these disparities. We need to speak truth about racial bias in the healthcare system, much less the history of, the Tuskegee, all of those things, right? So we need to speak truth and acknowledge the reason, the legitimate reason for people's hesitance. And so let's do that first. And then let's talk also about why this is safe. In fact, there was a Black woman who works out at NIH, a scientist, Dr. Kizzy Corbett, who was one of the inventors of the vaccine that we're now using. And so we want to get the information to people in a way that they know it is safe, it is effective, and it will save your life. It will save the life of your family members and community members. And so we need to speak truth about the disparities. We need to speak truth about the racial bias in the system. We need to speak truth about the need to fix these problems, and they're long overdue to be fixed.
And what do you think it means? I mean, for Black Americans, for Americans to have a Black woman making that case, to be speaking those truths, how much do you think you're part of that equation specifically in helping to get people over, whatever the barriers are to them getting this vaccine, whether it's hesitancy or it's access?
I mean, I feel a great sense of responsibility. When I took that oath on January 20th, there were a whole lot of people standing on that stage with me. And you may not have seen them, but they were in my heart, they were in my mind when I had my hand on the Bible and raised my hand to take that oath. And I feel the weight of the responsibility that comes with that. I mentor a lot of people, and I tell them, when you're in that room, you may be the only one like you or looks like you, but there are a lot of folks in that room with you. And so you have to use your voice and that moment in a way that you carry with you the responsibility and the voices of so many who otherwise can't be in that room at that moment. And that's how I feel about everything that we are discussing, every challenge we are facing. And I also do it with a sense of optimism, knowing that we are still, yes, sadly, making a lot of firsts, but we are doing it. And if we keep at it, soon perhaps we will be talking about the second and the third and the fourth, and it will be common and not something that we need to write about because it's just happening everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I want to ask, given the way that these negotiations are going so far, the meetings that you all have been having, how you would characterize the prospects at this moment for the passage of the American Rescue Plan, and how close you think you all will get to the proposed $1.9 trillion package?
I feel optimistic. I mean, to be very frank with you, I don't think we have a choice. This has to get done. There will be a negotiation process. It's going through a process right now. But what's on the line, what's at stake? People are out of work and they are hungry and they can't pay their bills. People are dying. People are sick. Children are going without an education. There is so much, and then there's also just this whole point about, this K-shaped economy, right? So, and meanwhile, rich people are doing even better and working people are doing worse. The dichotomy is growing. And so I don't believe and I don't see a choice. We have to support America's working families. We have to support working people. We are talking about so many people who take pride in their work, who understand the dignity of work, who want to get back to work. And we need to support that and to support a plan and a process to get the kids back in school, to get small businesses open back up, and obviously, first and foremost, to deal with the public health issue, which has created all of this. And we don't have time to spare. So we're not going to let up. We're not going to let up. And I would just ask of the folks who are listening to this conversation to please encourage your member of Congress to support this plan, which is a rescue plan. And let's get back on our feet. We got too much to do.